I'm a perfumer who can identify 3,000 scents, but it took kissing Italy's most wanted criminal to finally smell what freedom tastes like. Welcome to Amy's Romance Stories. If you're new here, comment below where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join our growing family of Mafia romance story lovers. The crystal chandeliers of Palazzo Vecchio cast amber light across 300 of Italy's most powerful faces, and Artemisia Sovrana was about to lose everything she'd ever loved. She just didn't know it yet. She moved through the crowd like a queen, her black silk gown whispering against marble floors that had witnessed 5 centuries of Florentine power plays. Around her neck, her mother's emerald necklace caught the light. The same necklace her father had clasped there the night before he died. Tonight was supposed to be her coronation, the launch of Celestiale, the perfume that would cement the Sovrana name in history. 50 million euros in pre-orders, international press, her face on the cover of Vogue Italia next month. And in 3 hours she would stand on that stage with Dante, her fiancé, her partner, and unveil 7 years of obsessive work distilled into a single perfect bottle. She should have known perfect things don't exist. Artemisia checked her watch, a vintage Cartier that had belonged to her grandmother. 8:45. Dante was supposed to meet her 15 minutes ago to go over the presentation. She wove through clusters of fashion editors and Saudi princes, nodding at compliments she barely heard. Her mind was already in the moment. That glorious moment when she would spray Celestiale into the air and watch 300 sophisticated faces transform with wonder. The scent was revolutionary. Himalayan ghost orchid, a flower that bloomed once every 10 years at altitudes where most humans couldn't breathe. It had cost her 2 years and €500,000 just to acquire 3 petals. But it was worth it. God, it was worth it. She found the private archive vault on the 2nd floor, where the original Sovrana bottles were displayed behind bulletproof glass. The door was ajar. Strange. Security was supposed to keep this room locked during events. She pushed it open, already forming the reprimand she'd deliver to her head of security, and the words died in her throat. Dante had Violetta pressed against the wall between a display of 1920s Art Deco bottles, his hand tangled in her dark hair, his mouth on her neck. Her twin sister, her mirror image, her other half, had her legs wrapped around Artemisia's fiancé's waist, and scattered across the antique table were Artemisia's private formula journals, photographed page by page, a hidden camera still recording on a tripod in the corner. The sound that came out of Artemisia wasn't quite human. It was the sound of something essential breaking. They sprang apart. Violetta's lipstick was smeared. Dante's shirt was unbuttoned, and neither of them, had the decency to look ashamed. "How long?" Artemisia heard herself say, and her voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from underwater. "How long have you been doing this?" Violetta smiled, that venomous smile Artemisia had seen 1,000 times growing up. Every time Violetta came in second, every time their father praised Artemisia's nose, every time the world chose Artemisia over her shadow. 3 years, she said, and her voice was honey and poison. "Since the night he put that ring on your finger. You were so busy smelling flowers you never noticed him in my bed." The room tilted. 3 years. They'd been planning a wedding for 3 years while he'd been sleeping with her sister. Artemisia's eyes went to the camera, to her formulas spread out like a violation. "What are you doing with my work?" she demanded. Dante finally spoke, and his voice was cold, businesslike, nothing like the warm tone he used in bed. "You were always going to choose your perfumes over me, Artemisia. At least Violetta knows how to pay attention to a man. And your formulas, well, let's just say there are people willing to pay extremely well for Sovrana's secrets." Before she could think, before she could process, Artemisia lunged for the camera. Violetta blocked her, and suddenly they were struggling, twin against twin, 28 years of sisterhood shattering into violence. Artemisia's hand connected with Violetta's face, a slap that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. The camera crashed to the floor. Dante grabbed Artemisia's arm hard enough to bruise. "Don't be stupid," he hissed. "This is already done. The photos are already sent." "To who?" Artemisia spat. "Who are you working for?" But Dante just smiled, straightened his shirt, and walked out. Violetta followed, pausing only to look back at her twin. "You were always father's favorite," she said quietly. "I hope your precious perfumes keep you warm at night." And then Artemisia was alone in a room full of her family's history. Her engagement ring burning on her finger like an accusation, her life's work stolen, her heart shattered across the marble floor. She grabbed a bottle of champagne from a passing waiter's tray, drank directly from it, and walked back into the gala. The room spun slightly. She'd barely eaten all day, too nervous, and the champagne hit her bloodstream like vengeance. She needed air. She needed to think. She needed to burn the entire world down and dance in the ashes. She wasn't watching where she was going. Later, she'd wonder if fate had a sense of humor or just a cruel streak. She collided with a wall of muscle and expensive fabric, and strong hands caught her shoulders before she could fall. "Careful," a voice said above her head, dark and smooth like aged whiskey. "That champagne is worth more than most people's cars." Would be ashamed to waste it on the floor. Artemisia looked up and up into the darkest eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, 6 feet easily, in a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her car. His face was all sharp angles, severe cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass. A thin scar traced from his left eyebrow into his hairline. He looked like a Renaissance statue had come to life and decided to attend a gala. And he smelled like sin. Her perfumer's brain cataloged the scent automatically. Laotian agar wood, the dark variety, aged at least 20 years. Illegal to harvest, illegal to sell, worth 100,000 euros per kilo. Underneath that, tobacco, leather, something dark and resinous she couldn't quite identify. This was a man who wore his wealth and his danger like a second skin. The room around them had gone quiet. People were backing away, creating a circle of empty space. Artemisia heard whispers, felt the weight of 300 stares. Lysander Mordaunt, someone breathed, and the name rippled through the crowd like a curse. Artemisia knew that name. Everyone in the luxury world knew that name. He was the man who controlled the black market for rare goods across Europe. Stolen art, illegal perfume ingredients, antiquities that belonged in museums. The Carabinieri had been trying to build a case against him for a decade, and he just kept slipping through their fingers like smoke. His hand was still on her shoulder, warm through the silk of her dress. And before you hit that subscribe button, let me tell you, you're going to want to be notified when part 2 drops, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about love and revenge. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. "Are you all right?" he asked, and there was something in his voice, something that suggested he already knew the answer. Artemisia was drunk on champagne and heartbreak, and the particular madness that comes from having your life destroyed in the span of 15 minutes. She looked at this dangerous, beautiful man, and she had the worst, most brilliant idea of her entire life. "I need you to kiss me," she said. His eyebrows rose, the only sign of surprise on his otherwise impassive face. "Excuse me." "I need you to kiss me," she repeated, louder this time. "Right now. In front of everyone. I need my bastard fiancé to see that I'm not broken, that I'm not pathetic, that I can have anyone I want." She could feel Dante watching from across the room, could feel Violetta's shock radiating like heat. Lysander studied her face with those predator's eyes. "You're asking me for a favor?" he said quietly. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "You're the most dangerous man in Italy," Artemisia said. Which makes you perfect. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe, or interest. This will cost you, Bellissima, he murmured, and his thumb brushed her cheekbone. Are you prepared to pay? Name your price. His smile was slow and devastating. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, my villa in the hills. We have business to discuss. Done, Artemisia said recklessly. Now kiss me before I lose my nerve. Lysander's hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. You're either very brave or very stupid, he said. Both, Artemisia whispered. Definitely both. When his mouth touched hers, the entire world disappeared. The kiss started as performance, she was certain of that, a favor for a desperate woman. But somewhere between the first touch of his lips and the second breath, it stopped being theater and became something else entirely. His mouth was warm and tasted like the vintage wine she'd selected for tonight, complex and devastating. His other hand found her waist, pulled her closer against that expensive suit. And Artemisia forgot about the audience, forgot about dignity, forgot everything except the way he kissed, like he was claiming something precious. She made a sound, something embarrassingly desperate, and felt him smile against her mouth. Then he bit her lower lip, gentle but possessive, and Artemisia's knees actually buckled. He caught her easily, shifting his weight to support her like women fainted into his arms every day. When he finally pulled back, Artemisia's carefully pinned hair had come loose. Her lipstick was ruined, and Lysander looked completely unaffected except for a slight darkness in his eyes and the faint trace of her lipstick on his mouth. He wiped it away with his thumb, never breaking eye contact. Better, he asked quietly. Artemisia couldn't speak. She nodded. Good. His hand was still in her hair, warm and possessive. Now smile at them like you've won. She turned in his arms to face the crowd, and the look on Dante's face was worth every consequence that was coming. Violetta had gone pale. 300 witnesses stood frozen, phones out, cameras flashing. By tomorrow morning, this kiss would be on every gossip site from Rome to Paris. The wedding is off, Artemisia announced, and her voice carried across the silent room. Obviously. Violetta, you can have him. He's clearly more your speed. She twisted the engagement ring off her finger and threw it. It bounced off Dante's chest and skittered across the marble floor. As for me, I'm upgrading. The crowd erupted in whispers. Artemisia felt Lysander's chest shake with silent laughter against her back. You don't know what you're doing, Dante started, but one look from Lysander shut him up instantly. I think Signorina Sovrana knows exactly what she's doing, Lysander said, and there was steel under the silk of his voice. And I think you should leave. Both of you. Before I have you removed less politely. Men in dark suits materialized from the crowd, not security. Something else. Something private and infinitely more dangerous. Dante grabbed Violetta's arm and they retreated, the crowd parting for them like they carried disease. Lysander released Artemisia slowly, making sure she could stand. Your gala, he said. I believe you have a perfume to launch. I just destroyed my reputation in front of 300 witnesses, Artemisia said. I threw away my engagement. I kissed a criminal. She looked up at him. What am I supposed to do now? Launch the perfume anyway, Lysander said. Show them you're not defeated. Show them you're dangerous. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. And tomorrow night, come to my villa. Because that kiss just made you very interesting to some very dangerous people, and you're going to need protection whether you know it or not. He handed her a card, matte black with silver embossing, an address in the Tuscan hills. Nothing else. 8 o'clock, he said. Don't be late. And then he was gone, his security team melting away with him, leaving Artemisia alone in the center of a scandal that would fuel gossip for months. She launched Celestial anyway. Walked onto that stage with her head high and her heart in pieces, and sprayed the perfume into the air. And when the scent hit the crowd, when 300 sophisticated faces transformed with wonder, when the room erupted in applause, Artemisia smiled like a woman who'd just burned her old life down and was ready to build something fiercer from the ashes. All right, I'm going to be real with you for a second. If you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed yet, you're basically telling me you don't want to know what happens when Artemisia shows up at that villa. And honestly, that's going to haunt you at 3 a.m., when you're lying awake wondering what Lysander's business proposal was, so maybe just hit that button now and save yourself the regret. The next evening, Artemisia stood in front of her closet for 45 minutes, trying to decide what one wore to a meeting with a criminal. Something that said, "I'm not intimidated by your illegal empire, but also I appreciate fine things." She settled on a simple black dress and her mother's emerald necklace. If she was going to hell, she might as well look elegant doing it. The address led her into the Tuscan hills, up a private road lined with cypress trees, to a Renaissance villa that took her breath away. It perched on a hillside overlooking vineyards, all honey-colored stone and arched windows. The kind of place that had witnessed 500 years of history. As she pulled up, a man in a dark suit opened her car door. "Signorina Sovrana," he said, "Signor Mordaunt is expecting you." She followed him through gardens that smelled like lavender and rosemary, through a carved wooden door that was probably older than America, into an entrance hall that made her stop dead. The walls were covered in paintings. Real paintings. A Caravaggio she recognized from art history classes. A Titian that had been stolen from a Venetian church 20 years ago. A small Raphael that museums had been searching for since World War II. "You're staring," Lysander's voice came from above. She looked up. He was descending a curved marble staircase, dressed more casually than last night. Dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Somehow he looked more dangerous like this. Less polished. More real. "You have a stolen Caravaggio on your wall," Artemisia said. "Several stolen Caravaggios. That Titian is supposed to be in Venice. I prefer to think of them as relocated to someone who appreciates them," Lysander replied. "The church kept the Titian in a basement. Seemed like a waste." He reached the bottom of the stairs. "You came. You knew I would. I hoped you would. There's a difference." He gestured toward a doorway. "Come. I have wine, and we have much to discuss." The room he led her to was intimate, wood-paneled, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the darkening hills. A table was set for two. He poured wine, something red and expensive, and slid a glass across to her. "Before business, we drink," he said. "It's civilized." Artemisia sipped. Barolo. She identified automatically. 1997 vintage, Piedmont. His smile was approving. "Your reputation is deserved." "What do you want from me?" she asked, setting down the glass. "Last night you said we had business. I assume you don't help strange women at galas out of the goodness of your heart." "No," Lysander agreed. "I help them because I want something." He pulled a folder from a side table and laid photographs across the table between them. "Do you recognize these people?" Artemisia's blood went cold. They were surveillance photos. Dante meeting with men in expensive suits. Violetta photographing documents. Bank transfer records. Pages and pages of financial documentation. "Your fiancé works for the Sanguinetti family," Lysander said calmly. "Has for 5 years. They planted him in your company to steal your formulas and gather intelligence on your operations." "Why?" Artemisia whispered. "Because the Sanguinettis want to build a counterfeit perfume empire," Lysander said. "They already control luxury handbag knockoffs, fake pharmaceuticals, designer fashion. Perfume is the next frontier. And Sovrana's formulas. Your formulas are worth hundreds of millions on the black market. Artemisia's hands were shaking. She gripped the edge of the table. This can't be real. It's very real. Lysander pulled out another photograph, and this one made Artemisia's vision swim. It was an autopsy report. Your father didn't die of a heart attack 3 years ago. He was poisoned with oleander extract. Undetectable unless you're specifically looking for it. No, Artemisia said. No, that's not possible. He discovered the Sanguinettis were trying to infiltrate Savrana. He was going to expose them, so they killed him and made it look natural. The room was spinning. Artemisia stood abruptly, knocking over her wine. It spread across the table like blood. You're lying. This is some kind of manipulation. Lysander didn't move, just watched her with those dark, patient eyes. I have the toxicology report. I have recorded conversations. I have 15 years of documentation. Your father was murdered, Artemisia. And the people who killed him are still circling your company like vultures. Why? She choked out. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? He stood then, moved around the table. Because 20 years ago, the Sanguinetti family killed my parents in a business dispute, burned down their home with them inside. I was 14 years old. I've spent the last 2 decades building an empire for one purpose, to get close enough to destroy them completely. He was close now, close enough that she could smell that dark agar wood scent again. You want your company back? He said quietly. I want them dead or in prison. We can help each other. How? Artemisia demanded, and she was crying now, angry tears that ruined her makeup. How am I supposed to fight a crime family? I make perfume. I don't know anything about this world. But I do, Lysander said, and I have resources you can't imagine, contacts, intelligence, power. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. I'm offering you a partnership, Artemisia. You be the bait. Help me draw them out. And I'll give you everything you need to take back Savrana and make sure they never threaten you again. What's in it for you besides revenge? The satisfaction of watching them burn, he said simply. And perhaps the company of a brilliant perfumer who understands that beautiful things are worth fighting for. What would I have to do? Move into this villa. Let me protect you. Create a fake formula, something irresistible, and we leak it to Dante. When the Sanguinettis try to steal it, we'll have all the evidence we need to bury them. You want me to live with you? Artemisia said. I want you alive, Lysander corrected. And right now, knowing what you know, you're a target. Unless you'd prefer to go home to your empty apartment and wait for them to come for you. Artemisia thought about her father, kind and gentle, who'd taught her to identify Jasmine at age 5. Murdered. She thought about Dante's hands on Violetta, 3 years of lies. She thought about her life's work, stolen and sold. Okay, she said. I'll do it. I'll help you destroy them. Even if it means becoming a criminal yourself. They killed my father, Artemisia said, and her voice was ice and fire. They can burn in hell. And I'll light the match. Lysander smiled, and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. Then we begin tomorrow. Tonight you should see what you're working with. He led her through the villa, showing her rooms filled with stolen antiquities, rare wines, luxury goods that moved through his black market network. And then he opened a door to a laboratory that made Artemisia gasp. It was a perfumer's paradise, walls lined with ingredients she'd only dreamed of, vials of natural ambergris, Siberian musk deer oil, flowers preserved in amber, oils from trees that had gone extinct a century ago. This was my mother's, Lysander said quietly. She was a perfumer too, before they killed her. Artemisia moved through the space like a woman in a trance, touching bottles with reverent fingers. This is extraordinary. Create something for me, Lysander said. Right now. No limits, no rules. Show me what you can do. And here's the thing. If you've made it this far in the story and you still haven't subscribed, I honestly don't know what to tell you, because we're about to get into the part where everything changes, and you're going to kick yourself if you lose this channel and can't find out what happens next. So do yourself a favor and just click it. Artemisia worked in silence, blending sense with an intensity she'd never felt before. Rage and grief and something darker, something that tasted like vengeance. She combined notes that shouldn't work together: oud and blood orange, gunpowder and vanilla, smoke and silk. When she finished, she held out the strip of paper. Lysander inhaled, and something broke in his expression. "What is this?" he asked, his voice rough. "It's what revenge smells like," Artemisia said. "Beautiful and terrible, seductive and deadly. It's us." He looked at her for a long moment, and the air between them crackled with something dangerous. Then he kissed her. And this time there was no audience, no performance. Just two broken people reaching for each other in the dark. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Artemisia whispered, "This is insane." "Yes," Lysander agreed. "But insanity is just another word for bravery." He rested his forehead against hers. "Stay. Help me burn them down. And maybe we'll find something worth building in the ashes." "What if we destroy each other instead?" Artemisia asked. "Then at least we'll burn together." And somehow, in a laboratory full of rare scents and stolen beauty, that felt like the most honest promise anyone had ever made her. 6 months after Artemisia moved into the villa, after they'd fallen in love while hunting monsters, after Violetta's confession that she'd been protecting her sister all along, after the Sanguinetti men broke into their home and Lysander killed 2 of them with his bare hands to save her, the Carabinieri came at dawn. Artemisia woke to the sound of boots on marble, shouting in Italian, the metallic click of weapons being loaded. Lysander was already out of bed, pulling on trousers with the calm of a man who'd been expecting this moment for years. "Get dressed," he said quietly. "Don't say anything without a lawyer present. No matter what they ask you." "Lysander, what's happening? What always happens to men like me?" he said, and kissed her forehead. "Justice." They arrested him in the entrance hall, beneath the stolen Caravaggio, while 20 Carabinieri officers swarmed through the villa, seizing computers and documents, and evidence of 15 years of carefully constructed crimes. The captain, a severe woman with steel-gray hair, read charges that seemed to go on forever. Smuggling of protected goods, money laundering, art theft, illegal antiquities trading, conspiracy. And at the end, almost as an afterthought, suspicion of murder. Artemisia stood frozen in one of Lysander's shirts, watching them put him in handcuffs. He looked at her one last time. "The locked room," he said. "Everything you need is in the locked room. You're protected, Artemisia. I made sure of it. Don't you dare," she choked out. "Don't you dare say goodbye like this." But they were already leading him away, and the last thing she saw was his dark eyes holding hers until the door closed between them. The villa emptied slowly. Officers carried out boxes and hard drives. The severe captain approached Artemisia with something almost like sympathy in her expression. "Signorina Sovrana," she said, "we know you're not involved in his criminal activities. We have evidence that you were manipulated, used. If you cooperate, testify against him, you'll face no charges. You can walk away from this completely clean." Artemisia's voice was ice. "I have nothing to say without my lawyer." The captain sighed. "He's not worth your loyalty. Men like Lysander Mordaunt destroy everything they touch. Don't let him destroy you too." But she didn't understand. Lysander had already destroyed Artemisia, and she'd destroyed him right back. And from that mutual destruction, they'd built something fierce and true. You don't walk away from that. Not for safety, not for anything. After they left, Artemisia found the locked room, the one Lysander had forbidden her to enter for 6 months. The key was in his nightstand, exactly where she knew it would be. Inside, the room was lined with filing cabinets and whiteboards covered in photographs and names and connecting lines like a detective's murder board. 20 years of investigation, 20 years of gathering evidence against the Sanguinetti family. Documents proving murder, extortion, human trafficking, every crime they'd ever committed carefully cataloged and cross-referenced. And on the desk, a letter in Lysander's precise handwriting. Artemisia, if you're reading this, I've been arrested. I've been gathering this evidence for 20 years, since the night they killed my parents and left me alone in the world. Give it to the Carabinieri. It will destroy the Sanguinettis forever. Every member of their family, every business they control. They'll spend the rest of their lives in prison. I told you I was using you, that I needed Sovrana to get close to them. That was half true. I needed your company, yes. But I fell in love with you the night you created that scent of vengeance, when you looked at me like I was something other than a monster. Everything after was real. I'm going to prison for crimes I actually committed. I won't ask you to wait. Build something beautiful with your life. Don't let what I am taint what you can become. If you remember me at all, remember that loving you was the only pure thing I ever did. Lysander. Artemisia read it 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in her pocket. Then she called her lawyer, called the Carabinieri captain, and delivered every piece of evidence in that room. Within 48 hours, the entire Sanguinetti family was arrested. 37 people, from the patriarch to the lowest soldier. The evidence was ironclad. They'd spend the rest of their lives in prison, and Lysander would too. The trial became the media event of the decade. Every news channel in Italy covered it. The gentleman criminal, they called him. The man who'd built an empire of stolen beauty. The prosecution presented evidence of 15 years of crimes, a catalogue of theft and violence that should have horrified Artemisia. It didn't. She attended court every single day, sitting in the front row in elegant black dresses, wearing the scent she'd created for him so he could smell her from across the room. The media called her La Pazza, the crazy one, the perfumer who'd fallen in love with a killer. They speculated endlessly about her motives. Was she brainwashed? Was she complicit? Was she simply insane? Artemisia didn't care. Let them talk. Her lawyers begged her to stay away, told her that her presence at the trial was damaging her reputation, destroying her business. Sovrana's board called emergency meetings. Clients canceled contracts. Her face appeared on tabloid covers with headlines like, "From heiress to criminal's lover, the nose who lost her mind." Violetta was the only one who understood. Her sister, forgiven now, redeemed, sat beside her in court every day. "You don't have to do this," Violetta whispered during a recess. "You could walk away. No one would blame you." "I would blame me," Artemisia said. The prosecution offered immunity 3 separate times if Artemisia would testify against Lysander. Each time, her lawyer delivered the same response. "My client respectfully declines." On day 43 of the trial, Lysander took the stand. He'd lost weight in custody, looked older, but his voice was steady as he confessed to everything. "Yes, I smuggled rare goods for 15 years. Yes, I laundered money through legitimate businesses. Yes, I stole art from private collections and museums. Yes, I killed 4 men." The courtroom was silent. "And yes," the prosecutor said, "you manipulated Signorina Sovrana, used her company to gather intelligence on the Sanguinetti family." Lysander's eyes found Artemisia in the crowd. "I did," he said. "At first, I needed access to Sovrana to complete my investigation. I saw an opportunity and I took it." "So you never loved her?" the prosecutor pressed. It was all part of your plan. No, Lysander said quietly. That wasn't part of any plan. I fell in love with her completely by accident. It was the one thing I did that I can't justify strategically. Loving her made me weaker, made me vulnerable, made me human. And I'd do it again. Why? The prosecutor demanded. Why risk everything for a woman you were using? Because she saw who I really was? Lysander said, and his voice cracked for the first time. She saw a killer and a thief, and she created a perfume that smelled like my soul. She saw the worst of me and stayed anyway. You don't walk away from that kind of recognition. You don't walk away from the only person who ever made you want to be better. Artemisia was crying silently in the front row. Violetta gripped her hand. The defense called character witnesses who spoke of Lysander's war against the Sanguinettis, his protection of trafficking victims, his careful documentation that brought down one of Italy's most dangerous crime families. They painted him as a dark hero, a man who did terrible things for ultimately noble reasons. The prosecution called him a criminal who'd found a convenient excuse for his crimes. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Guilty on 14 counts. The judge's voice was grave as he read the verdict. Signor Mordaunt, you have committed serious crimes against the Italian state. However, this court acknowledges your instrumental role in dismantling the Sanguinetti organization. Without your evidence, 37 dangerous criminals would still be operating freely. He paused. You did the right thing for the wrong reasons. Or perhaps the wrong thing for the right reasons. Either way, justice must be served. I sentence you to 7 years in federal prison. You'll be eligible for parole in 4 years. 7 years. Artemisia felt the number like a physical blow. They led Lysander away in chains. As he passed her row, he mouthed, "Don't wait." She mouthed back, "Try and stop me. Now look, I need you to really think about this for a second. If you're listening to this story and you haven't subscribed yet, you're genuinely going to lose sleep over not knowing how this ends. Like I'm talking 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling regret. So maybe just do yourself a favor and hit that button because I promise you, the reunion is worth every second of this wait. The aftermath was brutal. Artemisia's world became very small very quickly. The Sovrana board attempted a vote of no confidence. She fired all of them and replaced them with people she trusted. Clients who'd abandoned her during the trial came crawling back when they realized the scandal had actually increased Sovrana's profile. Notoriety sold. Infamy sold. The perfume house of the woman who loved a criminal became the most talked-about brand in Europe. She used the attention ruthlessly. Launched a new fragrance line called Attesa, waiting. Each scent named after an emotion, longing, devotion, patience, faith. The marketing campaign featured Artemisia alone in elegant settings, looking at empty chairs, unmade beds, waiting. It became the best-selling perfume launch in European history. Critics called it heartbreak in a bottle. They weren't wrong. Artemisia visited Lysander every 2 weeks at the federal prison in Pisa. 30 minutes each visit, sitting across from each other at a plastic table, not allowed to touch, except for one kiss at the beginning and one at the end. She wore the scent she'd made for him every time so the smell of her would linger after she left. They talked about everything and nothing. He asked about the business. She told him about new fragrances, difficult clients, Violetta's slowly rebuilding life. He told her about books he was reading, the monotony of prison routine, the way time moved differently inside. They didn't talk about how much it hurt. During one visit, 6 months in, Lysander said, "You should move on, Artemisia. You're 29. You should be getting married, having children, building a life." "I am building a life," she said. "I'm building an empire. And when you get out, you'll help me run it. 4 years is a long time." "I'd wait 20, she said. "I'd wait forever." "You're worth it." "I killed people," he said quietly. I'm not a good man. I don't want a good man, Artemisia replied. I want you. Those aren't the same thing. At night, alone in the villa that still smelled like him, Artemisia slept in his shirts and worked until exhaustion made rest possible. She transformed his mother's laboratory into her own workspace, creating fragrances that won international awards. She used the profits to fund programs for victims of organized crime, turning his dark empire into something that helped people. She never dated, never looked at another man. Her friends stopped trying to set her up after the 5th or 6th attempt. Violetta understood. Her twin had her own redemption arc to complete, working at Savrana with a dedication that felt like penance. She'd left Dante the moment the truth came out. He'd tried to contact her, sent letters begging for forgiveness. She burned them all. 2 years after Lysander's conviction, Artemisia got the call she'd been waiting for. He was eligible for early parole. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in March. Artemisia hired the best lawyer in Italy, prepared a presentation that would make the parole board weep. Character references from business leaders, charity organizations, even the carabinieri captain who'd arrested him. She wore white to the hearing, a power suit that cost more than a car, the emerald necklace, and the original scent she'd created that first night in his laboratory, vengeance transformed into hope. The parole board reviewed his file for what felt like hours. Lysander sat quietly, his hands folded, his expression neutral. He'd aged in prison, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But when he looked at Artemisia, the intensity was unchanged. Signor Mordaunt, the board chairman said finally, you've shown exemplary behavior during your incarceration. You've completed 3-degree programs, taught other inmates to read, participated in every rehabilitation program available. The warden speaks highly of you. He paused. However, you committed serious crimes, murder among them. Why should we release you early? Lysander spoke clearly. I won't insult this board by claiming I'm reformed. I did what I did knowingly. But I've spent 4 years thinking about what kind of man I want to be when I leave here. And I've decided I want to be the kind of man who deserves the woman who waited for me, the kind of man who builds things instead of stealing them. I can't undo the past, but I can choose a different future. Artemisia testified next, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. This man helped me save my family's company. He helped bring down one of the most dangerous crime families in Italy. He protected me when no one else could. And yes, he committed crimes. But he also showed me what it means to fight for something that matters. He deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance. The board deliberated for 2 hours. Artemisia paced the courthouse hallway, Violetta beside her, both of them silent with tension. When they were called back in, the chairman's face was unreadable. The board has decided, he said, to grant parole effective immediately, with conditions. Signor Mordaunt will be subject to monitoring, regular check-ins with a parole officer, and any violation will result in immediate reincarceration for the remainder of his sentence. Artemisia's knees gave out. Violetta caught her, both sisters crying and laughing. Lysander stood, shook the chairman's hand with perfect composure, but when he looked at Artemisia, she saw his hands trembling. 2 hours later, after paperwork and processing and a dozen bureaucratic hurdles, Lysander walked out of the prison gates into spring sunshine. Artemisia was waiting, leaning against her car, her hair down, wearing jeans and one of his old shirts she'd stolen years ago. They stared at each other for a long moment. 4 years, 1,460 days, 35,040 hours. Hi, she said, and her voice broke. Hi, he said, and then she was running, and he was catching her, and they collided like gravity, like inevitability, like 2 stars finally finding each other in the dark. The kiss was desperate and gentle and everything. His hands in her hair, her face wet with tears. 4 years of longing compressed into one perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, neither could speak. Lysander rested his forehead against hers, his breath shaking. "You waited," he whispered. "I told you I would," Artemisia said. "Did you think I was lying? I thought you'd realize you deserved better." "I deserve you," she corrected. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." She drove him to the villa, their hands clasped between them, unable to let go. The Tuscan hills were golden with spring growth, olive trees silver in the afternoon light. When they pulled up to the villa, Lysander went very still. "You kept it," he said. Artemisia smiled. "I expanded it, actually. Wait until you see what I did with the east wing." The villa had been transformed. Still beautiful, still filled with art, but different now. Lighter. Legal. She donated the stolen pieces to museums, replaced them with paintings purchased through legitimate channels. His mother's laboratory had become her workspace, expanded and modernized. "Welcome home," she said. Lysander walked through the rooms like a man in a dream, touching furniture, looking at photographs she'd hung of their life before. And then she led him to the laboratory. On the center table sat a single bottle, unlabeled, surrounded by candles. "What is this?" he asked. Artemisia's hands were shaking as she picked it up. "Your mother's perfume. I found her formula in her notes. It took me 2 years to source the ingredients, another 6 months to get it right. But I recreated it." She sprayed it into the air. The scent bloomed, delicate and complex. Jasmine and vanilla, something warm and sweet and utterly feminine. Lysander made a sound like he'd been punched. He dropped to his knees. And the sobs that came out of him were 20 years of grief finally released. Artemisia knelt beside him, held him while he shattered, while he finally let himself mourn the mother he'd lost at 14, the parents who'd been stolen from him, the childhood that had ended in flames. "She would have loved you," he choked out against her shoulder. "My mother. She would have loved you so much." "I know," Artemisia whispered, "because I love you, and she taught you how to love beautiful things." They stayed on the floor of the laboratory for an hour, surrounded by the scent of his mother's memory, rebuilding each other piece by piece. That night, under Tuscan stars, Lysander got on one knee in the garden with a ring made from his mother's emerald, the necklace Artemisia had worn the night they met. The necklace that had belonged to his mother first, the connection between their families neither had known existed. "I have nothing to offer you," he said, "but a criminal record and a name people will always whisper about. But I love you more than revenge, more than redemption, more than my own life. Marry me, Artemisia. Let me spend every day earning the faith you had in me." Okay, real talk for a second. If you've gotten this far and you still haven't hit subscribe, I'm genuinely concerned about your decision-making skills, because we're literally at the proposal, and you're really going to risk losing this channel and never finding out about the wedding. Like, come on, just click the button. Future you will thank present you. Artemisia pulled him to his feet, kissed him until they were both breathless. "Yes," she said. "Yes. 1,000 times yes. You don't have to earn anything. You already have all of me." They were married 6 weeks later at Savrana headquarters, in the original perfume laboratory where her great-great-grandfather had created the first Savrana scent in 1823. Intimate ceremony, 20 guests. Violetta as maid of honor, radiant and healed. One of Lysander's former associates, gone legitimate, officiated. Artemisia wore white silk and carried a bouquet of bergamot and cedar. The wedding scent was her masterpiece, something she'd been creating for 4 years. She called it Rinascita, rebirth. It smelled like agarwood and jasmine, smoke and sweetness, his darkness and her light combined into something entirely new. When she sprayed it in the air as Lysander kissed her as his wife, every person in the room wept. The photographer captured the moment, Artemisia in white, Lysander in black, surrounded by golden light and the scent of new beginnings. But the story doesn't end there, because fairy tales are lies, and real love is messier and better than fiction. 1 year after the wedding, Artemisia woke at dawn in the villa, in the bed she shared with her husband, in the life they'd built from ruins and revenge and ridiculous stubborn faith. Lysander was already awake, his hand resting on her stomach where their daughter was growing, 16 weeks now, strong and healthy and impossible. They'd named her Julia, after his mother. "What are you thinking?" Artemisia whispered. "That I waited 20 years for revenge," he said quietly. "But you taught me something better." "What's that?" "That some things are worth waiting for," he said. "And some things are worth living for." He kissed her, gentle and reverent. "You gave me back my humanity. You gave me a future. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Artemisia corrected. Outside, the sun was rising over the Tuscan hills, painting the vineyards gold. Below them, Sovrana headquarters was already humming with activity. Her empire, their empire, built on perfume and persistence, and the particular magic of two broken people who'd found each other in the dark. The villa was theirs now, completely legal, converted into a museum showcasing his mother's perfume work. They'd funded a foundation for victims of organized crime. They'd turned his black market contacts into legitimate business networks. They'd taken everything dark about their past and alchemized it into light. In the laboratory, Artemisia's newest creation sat waiting. Eternita. Eternity. A scent that captured everything they'd survived, everything they'd become. It would launch next month, and the profits would fund scholarships for children who'd lost parents to violence. Lysander helped her out of bed, held her close in the golden morning light. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not walking away," he said, "for being crazy enough to love a killer, for waiting when anyone sensible would have run, for building this life with me." Artemisia smiled, touched his face, breathed in the scent of cedar and smoke that would always mean home. "I didn't build this life with you," she said. "I built this life because of you. You showed me that beautiful things can come from dark places. That redemption is real. That love is worth fighting for." She kissed him. And the laboratory filled with the scent of bergamot and jasmine, vengeance transformed into hope, darkness transformed into light. Even if it means burning down everything you thought you knew. Even then, Lysander agreed. Especially then. And if you're wondering whether love like this really exists, whether two people can really find each other in the wreckage and build something that lasts, the answer is yes. But only if you're brave enough to wait, brave enough to fight, brave enough to love someone even when the world says you shouldn't. And if that doesn't make you want to hit subscribe to hear more stories like this, then I honestly don't know what will. 6 months later, when Julia was born with her father's dark eyes and her mother's perfect nose, when Lysander held his daughter and wept with joy instead of grief, when Artemisia watched her husband become the father he'd never had, when the villa filled with laughter instead of ghosts, they knew they'd done the impossible. They'd taken blood and bergamot, violence and beauty, revenge and redemption, and created something that would outlast them both. A love story, a perfume empire, a legacy. And in the laboratory, where it all began, where a desperate woman had created a scent that smelled like vengeance and a broken man had recognized his own soul in the bottle, a new fragrance was already taking shape. Its name would be Speranza, hope, because that's what they'd given each other. That's what they'd give their daughter. That's what they'd give everyone who heard their story and wondered if impossible love could survive reality. The answer, written in scent and sealed with time, was yes. Always, yes. Here's my question for you. Would you wait 4 years for someone you loved? Would you choose dangerous love over safe loneliness? Drop a comment and tell me, because I read every single one and your answers fascinate me. If this story made you feel something, if you held your breath during the trial, if you believed even for a second that impossible love can survive, then subscribe right now, because I tell stories like this every week, stories about people who refuse to be broken, about love that survives everything. And honestly, if you made it this far without subscribing, you'll never find this video again when you want to hear it at 3 a.m. Hit that like button so I know you want more Mafia romances, more impossible love, more characters who choose each other even when it costs them everything. Please go subscribe before you forget. I'll see you in the next story.